Good morning. Friends, we are freed to be disciples. We do not have to. We are not forced to. We are not told to because the government wants us to. To be a disciple of Jesus, it is not to be bound up in a multitude of rules and regulations. Now, a lot of outsiders think that Christians have a lot of rules against things. Now, my mother's grandfather helped to found a Methodist church in West Texas in the 1920s. He was a stern man, and he did not tolerate gambling or drinking or playing cards. He would not have fun at our festival in September. He was a stern man. And like many others, he was a rules man. Now, there are at least two problems with being a rules man or being a rules woman. One is that you become defined by the rules that you keep or by the rules that you do not. The second and bigger problem is that our faith is not one of following rules. Our faith is about following Jesus Christ. Christ has set us free from the following of oppressive laws and rules of faith. When Christians do good things, it is when they forgive one another, when they love one another, when they refrain from wild and crazy behavior. It is not because we are afraid of punishment, because we did not follow the rules. It is because Christ has made it possible. Christ has transformed our hearts so that we want to do good things. We want to forgive one another. We want to love our enemies. Friends, as followers of the way, as Christians, as disciples, we are not forced to do those things. We are freed to do those things. We are free to be. The church has a problem. The church in the United States, the mainline Protestant church. According to the research, many young adults believe that church is like 5th grade or driver's ed. Now let me explain. Now I was listening to a podcast, to an interview with Dr. Christian Smith, who is a professor of sociology of religion at Notre Dame. And for the past decade, he's been heading up this research on youth and young adult religious beliefs and spirituality. It is the best research of its kind in the world today on this topic, youth and young adult religion and spiritual beliefs. Now, he and his team, they've been tracking youth and young adults for at least a decade, a longitudinal study. And they've written a handful of books on their findings. Now, one of their studies on 18 to 23-year-olds, what they call emerging adults, they found the following attitudes to be true for them concerning their religious beliefs. As a generalization, 18 to 23-year-olds have a benign attitude toward religion. They find it to be a topic of interest, but were largely disengaged from religious communities. So the research team studied their attitudes about confirmation. They went back, because they've been tracking these people for 10 years, and they went back and said, let's figure out what kind of religious training did you have. And a lot of young adults who don't participate in churches today, non-affiliated, grew up in church. Right? They grew up in church. And they went through confirmation, and they asked them, well, what were your attitudes about confirmation? What did you learn? And here's what they found. Confirmation, rite of passage for many middle school and early high school aged youth. And it's a classic form of discipleship, because we're talking about discipleship in this series. Discipleship, following Jesus, studying His way. And according to Christian Smith, young adults, they see church as a place to learn some morals, to figure out what is good through classes like Sunday school and Bible study. They learn the teaching of the 10 Commandments. But once you were done with that, you were done. For instance, when you have mastered 5th grade, you were done. Church for young adults, this is their findings, is like elementary school. Everyone has to do it. You learn some basic elements, enough to get by. Some things are a pain, like penmanship. It was for me. Look at my handwriting. I didn't learn well. But once you were done, you were done. You graduate. In his words, this is his words, the idea to emerging adults that you need to continue being part of a congregation You need to be part of a community of believers, that this is not an individual thing, that this is a collective, or that you have a people that go back for a millennia, that are your people, that you are continuing. It does not make any sense to them. It does not make any sense. It makes as much sense as saying that once you are done with 5th or 6th grade, you should continue on with 5th or 6th grade. No, you learned it, you graduate, and you go on and you do something else. A better image, I think, that Christian Smith uses is this analogy. Religious congregations are like the driver's ed class of being good people. He says, it's sort of like, it's a royal pain. Nobody likes it. They are probably poorly taught. This is driver's ed, all right? But you do get to see videos of things you don't want to happen to you. And the state is not going to give you a license unless you do it. And it's probably good to learn what the signs mean. It's true. And when it's all said and done, it was probably good that you did the class, even though nobody wanted to go through that. But then when you were done, you go get your license and you are a driver. And then for somebody to say that I'm going to go to driver's ed for the rest of my life, that's insane. That's the end of his quote. Dr. Smith said that it is not that emerging adults do not value religious communities or congregations. They do. And they think they are probably good. He goes on to state that the way we have set it up in our congregations, how our churches do confirmation and discipleship, this lifelong learning. For young adults, it's like being in driver's ed. You do it, you appreciate it, you succeed, and you move on. Now, when I read this interview, and I read the book and I listened to his interview, I was not surprised. It fit my experience of working with youth and young adults over the past decade of my life. It does not fully explain the decline of religious participation by this age group and other age groups, but it is a piece of the puzzle. I remember driver's ed when I was 16. I watched videos of things I would prefer not to happen to me. I passed notes with my friends. I remember this. I learned the rules of the road. And when I finished class, I went on to get my driver's license. There was nothing transformative or life-changing about my driver's ed class. That is how emerging adults see our churches. How dreadful. That is how they see our faith. We are the driver's ed class. We are the class no one wants to take. The path of discipleship, it is not the driver's ed of morals or church teachings, but for some reason that is how they see us. In Paul's letter to the Galatians, you hear that we are called to freedom. Paul states that we are to live by the Spirit. Friends, the path of discipleship, the way of Jesus is one of freedom. It is not one of rules and laws and regulations that strangle our lives or our spirits. My life has been utterly transformed by the freedom of Christ, as I am sure yours has as well. There's another side of the story. I hear young adults saying that they want to follow someone like Jesus if they only had a path. We can imagine then, for a moment, postmodern discipleship using a different image of following Jesus. Take that driver's ed image and put it over there. Now imagine following Jesus on a dusty path. Imagine some of us so close to Him that we can almost touch His cloak, so close that we can see the contours of Jesus' face. Imagine some of us just a little bit further away where we can hear His voice and we stop and we pause to reflect about something that He said or that He did. Sometimes we fall behind on the path and we struggle to catch up, and we can see Him in the distance, fading from view. Perhaps we are on the sidelines and we see Jesus in this gaggle of followers stretching in the distance. Perhaps we are on the sidelines because He has come to our village, to our home, and this is our first time getting to hear and getting to see Him. Perhaps we have heard rumors of Him, stories of His miracles, and anecdotes about His teachings. You see, the path of discipleship contains those who are very close and intimate with Jesus. The path of discipleship has those who are a little further back. The path of discipleship has those who are further behind, who are struggling to catch up as well as those who put Jesus at a distance as they figure out what His teachings mean for their lives. The path of discipleship also has those who are hearing about Jesus and seeing Him for the very first time. You see, the path of discipleship has enough room for every kind of believer, even those who are figuring out what it means to believe in Jesus. The path of discipleship is a lifelong journey of incredible fruits, and yet it requires that we remain students of the way of Jesus for our entire lives. We do not graduate, at least not in this life. I cannot get excited about discipleship if it looks or feels like driver's ed. Young adults have opted with their feet by walking out. But I sense among them and among people of all ages a thirst for meaning, community, and a passionate desire to commit to something transcendent. I sense all people, yearning to participate in the building up of God's reign. The dusty path, it is a good image for capturing people's desire to be transformed by God. According to Paul's letter to the Galatians, we are free to be. We are not good because we follow the rules. We are people made good by following Christ. Our challenge as churches in a postmodern context is to capture again the spirit of discipleship as a lifelong path, an incredible journey that changes the world and transforms lives. No one wants to go to a boring driver's ed class. Does anyone here want to go to a driver's ed class? Either the real thing or the... No. Or does anyone here want their lives transformed, their hearts aligned with the Creator of the universe, to be full of the fruits of the Spirit, not because you have to, but rather because you want to? The fruits being love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. My discipleship questions for you this week are: how do we craft a compelling model of discipleship for the 21st century? What does it look like? How do we craft a compelling model of discipleship for the 21st century? And what does it look like? Who wants to follow the dusty path of Jesus? Who wants to participate in God's mission in the world? Who wants to learn how to be disciples? Who wants to transform the world? We are freed to be. So let's do it. Amen. Let us stay seated and sing our hymn, "O Jesus, I Have Promised," number 446.